Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if this is your first time. The Blood for Oil campaign just entered a new phase. From Iraq to Libya, history tells us that when a massive U.S. military presence meets a major oil reserve, the line between counter narcotics and outright invasion is paper thin. In our first video, we laid out the groundwork for this deadly theory. Now the final piece of the puzzle has been forced into place. The unprecedented seizure of an oil tanker off Venezuela's coast is no longer about sanctions. It is an act of international piracy and the ultimate economic strangulation. Is this the shock and awe moment for a Venezuelan ground invasion? Stay tuned as we break down the most dangerous escalation yet. I'm Michael P. for Your Democracy, and you're on the Purple Media Network. And I am bringing you this video to illustrate the Trump administration's blatant disregard for the law. So it really doesn't matter what it is, if it's the constitutional laws, U.S. laws, judicial orders, court orders, in other words, or as you see, international law. The Trump and the Trump administration, they really don't pay regard to that, and it's way beyond, take action and ask for forgiveness later. It's outright disregard for all these forms of law. So why does this matter? Well, as I told you in the first video, it matters because my theory is that this falls under a blood for oil campaign. And now that obviously is escalated, you can see here training video from military boot camp. And one of the main reasons that I stated in the original video was that none of us wants to send our kids or grandkids to war, especially for oil or some other natural resources. So we have to make sure that Trump and everyone in the Trump administration is following all the laws. And when they don't, it leads to major consequences. Now, I told you that I would be bringing you the 5 offenses that justify seizing a vessel at sea. Number 1, piracy, slave trading, unauthorized broadcasting, stateless vessels, and vessels suspected of drug trafficking. In the past, they have tried to use the excuse that a vessel was stateless, but in this case, we know they weren't pirates like Somali pirates. They weren't slave trading, moving, human trafficking, etc., or broadcasting, about they were going to attack, the U.S. or anything like that. They are a Nigerian vessel, Nigerian registered vessel that is owned and controlled by a Russian oligarch. So that kind of makes the plot thick in there. And just to conclude it, number 5, vessels suspected of drug trafficking. Unlike the boats that the 80-some boats that they've blown up, that they accuse of transporting drugs, this vessel was not drug trafficking. It was moving oil. They said sanctioned oil, really not sanctioned oil. When they brought sanctions against Iran and Venezuela, Russia, for selling oil. And so that is the reason they're saying they seized it, and also part of their Venezuelan campaign against drug trafficking. And you see there on the 5 under number 5 of the offenses, oil sanctions violations are not covered by these rules. So, but once again, that doesn't come into play for this group. So I did a deep analysis of the United Nations, international law, maritime law, the rules of sovereignty, and we do in the U.S. have some laws that we wrote, and so technically it would be allowable under our U.S. domestic law, but most experts agree that this clearly violates those uh, United Nations and maritime laws. In the issue of sovereignty, a sovereign vessel going to, in this case, Cuba, to another sovereign country, we really don't have any authority to intercept this vessel and take control. Um, and this is viewed by many governments as an act of economic and military aggression. Now, again, under the why this matters, and also what we try to do on this channel is tell you how this administration is conducting themselves that are against many principles. We often come back to the three branches of government and the separation of powers, duties, responsibilities. And as we know, the Trump administration has just assumed or usurped power under many of these different areas. So right here, this is Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, which talks about war. And before the seizing of this vessel, there was many people weighing in on just the blowing up of these suspected drug traffickers. And the Trump administration is trying to frame this under the war on drugs and using this as a quasi-war scenario. But here you see the founding fathers were very clear that they granted sole power to Congress to initiate and declare a state of war over an enemy combatant. And this goes on to say other laws that if the seizure involves military assets, which if you watch the video, you'll see helicopters and boats and Marines landing on this vessel and taking control. That is a pretty clear sign of using military assets to take over a vessel, command a situation, etc. So in this case, of course, Congress, they said they did brief some people, but really this should have been brought to Congress for a full briefing, and they are the ones that should say they're declaring war, some type of conflict against Venezuela. And many in Congress are saying that this is a clear escalation, military escalation without congressional approval. Like I always say, and we know there's consequences to everything we do, but herein lies the problem that Trump and the Trump administration, they come in with a wrecking ball into the situation. And there might be much of their policy and ideology that doesn't have some bad ideas to it, but they are incapable or unwilling to execute these things in a manner that is respectful, consistent with the norms, and with a outlook of what are the possible consequences and unintended consequences. Well, right away, the Venezuelan president, Maduro, is already coming out and taunting the U.S. and challenging them on their authority to do what they did. And he is rousing the people to go as far as take arms and to fight against the empire, which is the U.S., and defend their country. He's got another ally as well. President of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has told Maduro, "I've got your back," and willing to provide assets to help them stave off this incursion, as they call it. So I've read things where there is already a huge Russian presence in there, as well as terrorist gangs, and this is frightening. It is. There's probably truth to this, and the Trump administration is calling for a regime change. I call it the blood for oil. It's multifaceted. They want the resources, and they want a regime change. But if Russia is heavily embedded in there to begin with, I don't know what a regime change looks like, other than just another Russian puppet. So this is deeper. It's deeper than it appears on the surface, and it's frightening for all of us. So I'm going to see if I can play this video for you. And you're going to hear somebody come in and talk about Venezuela having the largest oil reserves in the world. And this is the blood for oil component. So here's another really frightening idea or concept. The NATO Secretary General was warning mostly to European allies that Putin has made direct threats about invading Europe as his next target, and he's not trying to say the sky is falling, but he tells people don't be asleep, that this is a real danger. And we saw Putin has already told Maduro that he's got his back, and we have to take all those threats seriously. In the meantime, here we have Representative Thomas Massie introducing legislation for us to leave NATO. Really disappointing, because he stood up to Trump regarding the Epstein files and so on. So to see this, kind of very disappointing. And certainly we know that Trump got after NATO, the European allies in NATO, especially to increase their defense spending, and the U.S. was occurring too much of the burden. So another case of, not a bad idea, not a bad thing to push back on, but for us to really, and Trump has threatened this before, to really say, well, we're not going to have their back. It's dangerous, uncalled for, and damaging to our relationships, and it really gives our enemies, especially in this case Russia, just I think gives them more, emboldens them more to make threats and to follow through on them. Which kind of brings us to the case of Russia. So, and what's going on with the Russian-Ukrainian war, and why that ties into all this is that, is there another hidden Trump agenda? I think we're all still perplexed on what kind of hold that Vladimir Putin has on Donald Trump, uh, and if it's really something, there is some kind of relationship. There's some kind of tie in there, that he's virtually let him do whatever he wants, and recently wants the Ukraine to just cave in and accept all the conditions that Russia uh, has put forth to end the war. And this is just so against decades and decades of you know Republican ideology and precedents against Russia and our other enemies. So this leads us to this theory of the blood for oil. And as I said before, it's not just that. It's never just one thing with the Trump administration. I can't tell you what they plan to do next or plan to do with it. They'll say one thing like this is all about drugs and killing 25,000 Americans a month or something like that. Well, as we showed you before, if that's the case, apologies for that. If that's the case, then why pardon this guy? We showed you that earlier. Former president of the Honduras received a 45-year sentence for hundreds of millions of dollars of bribes and bringing 400 tons of cocaine into the U.S. And yet Trump pardoned him after just 2 weeks in prison. So really, now you're saying Maduro and Venezuela, they're narco terrorists, and I just don't know how you can say that and do something so contrary and hypocritical like pardoning a big narco terrorist. Well, there's your guy again, the music man, the snake oil salesman, the flim flam man, running his shell game. And there's just too many things to point to that just blow our mind. How many balls in the air he has that are bringing destruction and chaos to the world and to our country. And this channel is about getting our democracy back. So please remember, this is all about us winning back the democracy at the midterm elections on November 3rd, 2026. So please stay safe, stay strong, and let's get ready to win our country back. Thanks for watching.